Welcome all into another episode of the unofficial WCC Hoops podcast, WCC Tournament edition of the podcast, as we are rounding out day one of the WCC Tournament from Las Vegas. Obviously, we are not in Las Vegas as of yet. But we will be there in a couple of days to get set for the quarters, semis, and of course the championship game down at Orleans Arena. The tournament has begun. We've had two games so far, and we are going to talk about game one that happened down at the Orleans, and it was the Portland Pilots and the Pepperdine Waves. And this was a game kind of going in. The Waves, we knew, had the advantage, had swept the season series 2-0. The Pilots wanted to get some get back, and they sure did, as they did beat the Waves 77-68 to advance in the WCC tournament, and will face Washington State on Friday at 6 p.m. And this was, Portland jumped out the gate really quickly in this one, and it almost felt like that they were going to start to run away with it. Pepperdine came back, made a show of it toward the end of the first half, but then Portland in the second half put on a really good run right there at the beginning, and essentially just was able to hold off Pepperdine just enough to be able to pull out the win.
Yeah, there was a lot of game script of last year's WCC tournament between these two teams. By the way, the first half ended. Portland gets out there, gets Pepperdine on the back heels, Waves calling timeout, and then Pepperdine just kept Portland honest more than anything, and that's kind of what propelled them to that second half comeback last season. And then this year, you kind of saw Pepperdine keep Portland honest again, down, I believe, a 6-point deficit at the break, and then kind of crucially, I think the Waves kind of just ran out of gas for a multitude of reasons. One, obviously, Aaron Clark going down, a big deal, a shot in the arm in terms of the guy who could just go out and get buckets. Styles Phipps fouls out with 4 and change to go. And I think at that point, you just kind of noticed the Pepperdine just didn't have a lot of athleticism to try and make up the difference. Javon Cooley tried his best. David Major tried his best. And then ultimately it was just too much. Jermaine Ballisager Webb, career high 20-plus points in that one. I think he really took advantage of the gravity that Joel Foxwell had. He didn't have his shot going, but he sure had his point vision going. So I think Jermaine Ballisager Webb, game ball for the Portland Pilots.
Absolutely. Career high 22 points. He had 7 rebounds, 5 for 7 from 3. And it's funny because he shot so well from 3, but he was only 3 from 9 from the free throw line. So he had this very weird number where clearly he just needed to take another couple steps back to shoot those free throws. He would have been just fine going into this one. James O'Donnell, 16 points, 8 for 10 from the field. And you mentioned Joel Foxwell, 3 for 15 from the field, 1 for 6 from 3. But it's not that he wasn't able to contribute in other ways. 8 assists, only 2 turnovers, 5 rebounds. He found other ways to contribute in this game, even though you kind of talked about the gravity that Foxwell had, and clearly Pepperdine was focused on making sure that he was not going to be the guy that hurt them. But the Pilots had a few other guys who were able to step up into those roles and really help them out. Looking at some of the other numbers, just jumping out, 42 to 26 points in the paint. Portland really dominated inside in this game. They also got out on the break and took advantage of the Pepperdine turnovers pretty well, 15 to 6 advantage there. And Portland essentially led this wire to wire. They never let Pepperdine get a lead in this game. And I think it was mentioned during the broadcast that the offense for Portland looked about as sharp as it had probably since the Gonzaga game when they upset them a few weeks back. This was the good version of Portland, even though everything didn't kind of go exactly the way they wanted. This is the type of Portland performance, the type of Portland team that could pick up another win on Friday night.
Yeah, and what will eventually be the Eastern Washington head coaches bowl in that one against Washington State. But I do want to give credit to Portland's offense, and I thought they did a good job cutting tonight. I thought they really filled the space, and we talked about Joel Foxwell's kind of gravity. It's kind of twofold. You had Jermaine Ballisager Webb sitting back for 3. We had other guys like Garrett Knuckles cutting, Dante Sensori Hercules cutting in. And I think that's really one of the best things you can kind of do is when the ball is not necessarily in your way, or you're not in an area of where you can take advantage just yet of all those bodies being thrown up for Joel Foxwell, go make something happen. And I thought a lot of the Portland Pilots made something happen with their cuts. I thought they just continually kept throwing jabs and chipping away at Pepperdine's defense. Even both squads throwing out a zone for a non-insignificant amount of time in this game. And all things considered, I think Portland got what they needed to do, got their get back for those 2 regular season losses. And I think the fact of the matter is, when you have Joel Foxwell go 3 of 15 from the floor, you still come out with a win in a game you never trailed in. I think you'll take that every single day of the week if you're Shante Leggins, especially as he mentioned going into the halftime interview that, look, they left the door open and then eventually they were able to slam it shut towards the very end. But Pepperdine kind of, as I mentioned earlier, they lost Aaron Clark, and that kind of took a lot of the steam out there. Took a pretty hard fall late in the first half, going up for a layup, got fouled after the fact, and kind of landed on his tailbone area. So he just played 22 total minutes, but clearly didn't have it by the time he checked out for good. And then it basically, not that the wheels fell off, but Pepperdine just didn't have many resources to ultimately turn to.
I mean, Eric Clark had played so well over the last couple of weeks. I think it was one of those, like, when you don't have that guy really there to kind of like fill that space, it was going to be a tough uphill climb for Pepperdine no matter what in this game, because we know that, like, what kind of the ceiling for Portland has been. And if they play well, they're going to be in a lot of ball games and win a lot of ball games. And unfortunately for Portland, it hasn't happened all too often, but when they do, we've seen that they can beat Gonzaga. They can beat some pretty good teams. Think about Kent State in the non-conference. Like, this was a capable team, and when you're not going to be at your best and you lose a player like an Aaron Clark, it's like it was going to be a tough night for the Waves, and that does close the book on this season for the Waves. And Portland moving on to take on Washington State, and these 2 teams, right before we were hopping on the air, it's the Glass Fox show. Like, this is this is going to be a fun one. You have 2 point guards that just absolutely can light it up, and obviously we didn't see the good version of Joel Foxwell on night 1, but in my head, of like, that means we're probably going to see him on night 2 under the bright lights in Las Vegas.
I think one, just to close the book on Pepperdine from our angle too, it's like now it's officially a new era. Mountain at Mullen coming in, so everything Firestone Fieldhouse had a great run. Looking forward to seeing that next chapter of Pepperdine basketball. We'll see how it kind of shakes out as they kind of build the roster going forward, and we'll see kind of what that leadership kind of looks like going into this next game of Portland and Washington State. I mean, you heard me mention the Eastern Washington Bowl, both David Riley and Shante Leggins having coached at Eastern Washington not too long ago, and then the battle of freshmen who believe they should have been freshmen of the year and rightfully had a case in saying so in Joel Foxwell and Ace Glass, and the Glass Fox, normally what could be a dive bar in Vegas for all we know. Those are, I mean, it should be a good one. 2 guys who can absolutely light it up. I expect Joel Foxwell to have a better shooting performance than he did tonight. I think that's not necessarily indicative of what he is on a night in, night out basis. We've seen those Orleans rims be as forgiving as they are. They're also equally as fickle. So we'll see how he kind of adapts going forward in Ace Glass, and what he can kind of bring to the table in terms of his explosiveness. I want to center in on Ndidi Okafor. I think when he's been playing great, he has a real good presence about him. And I think this is a matchup where he can, especially as when the Cougs beat down the Pilots in the second matchup in Pullman. I think that's kind of where it all starts on the interior for Washington State along that front. So really intrigued to see how Ndidi Okafor comes out energy-wise, in addition to the show that will be Ace Glass versus Joel Foxwell.
Yeah, I was thinking the exact same thing, as far as like this feels like an Ndidi Okafor sort of game. And yeah, we mentioned that Portland played well and dominated the paint in this game against Pepperdine, but in this matchup, this is a game that can lean Washington State in a certain way because of the size and the physicality that Ndidi Okafor can bring on the post. And also, this is another team defensively that can cause a lot of problems, because when Washington State is right on the offensive end, they make a ton of threes. I'm thinking of Reeve Avers kind of in a matchup like this, of like, if he can get loose, if he can get find a little bit of comfort on those Orleans Arena rims like that, he's a guy who can have a really good night in that arena, in that environment. And this, now the one thing about Washington State though is, like, we know that they have not played a ton of defense, and that is one of the problems that we have seen from them, especially down the stretch. Yes, they did beat Portland and put up triple digits on Portland the last time they saw them up at the Palouse, but this is a Portland team that has now gotten a game under their belt in Las Vegas, probably just feeling a little bit more comfortable on these rims, shot it pretty well, and is going to go up against a team that needs, I think, to prove that they can defend it a bit. And we've seen some highs from Washington State, and we've seen some lows from Washington State. And what version of that team are we going to see come out on Friday night? That's really feels like the tipping point for me. Of we see good Washington State that they play at least can have a decent amount of defense, they can run away with it. If they play like they did against, say, Pepperdine the other night, this is a game where Portland and Joel Foxwell can have a big night in advance, and maybe they turned into Cinderella here in this last version of the WCC tournament.
I think that's a great way of putting it, because I mean, we've heard it from David Riley on some of these like Washington State radio post-game reports. It's like kind of lost at sea. We don't know what Washington State's going to show up. Is it the ones that loses at USD and the one that loses at Pepperdine playing no defense? Is it the one that kind of stands tall and plays Santa Clara for 40 straight minutes, or even plays USF good for 37 minutes? Which one is it going to be along that front? And like you mentioned, that kind of gets dictated by the terms of the way their offense goes. I think their defense is more or less on their heels pretty consistently. At least that's what the body of work says throughout this season. And going against a Portland team that knows how to turn the corner and get downhill and really play inside out from that department, that can pose some problems. And the first matchup is really a defensive struggle fest for a lot of that game. And then that second matchup, Washington State just beat the brakes off Portland. But it is hard to beat a team 3 times. We've seen it kind of get talked about. That's a thing that happens all throughout the country. So really intrigued to see kind of what version of Washington State shows up, because it's kind of like a box of chocolates. And sometimes you're going to get some really good stuff. And even if you want to make it like those, I forget what the brand is called, and this is the wrong time to forget about it, but like the beans that you can have your good beans, and you can have your bad beans. We'll see what Washington State springs up in that department.
I think you meant the Jelly Bellies. Is that where
Yes.
you're going with the jelly beans? But I mean, looking at Washington State, I think the other thing to kind of note is like that they have, away from the Palouse, has not been a great place for them. They are 2-2 on neutral courts, which obviously includes the Maui Invitational. 1-11 in true road games are the Cougs. So this is playing away from home has been a bit of a house of horrors. And the 2 games you mentioned are that against Portland specifically are just so different. And almost you can largely point at one number. In round 1, they were 8 for 23 from 3. And in round 2, they were 16 for 31. That sort of swing from home and away does obviously makes a huge difference on the scoreboard, but also just the flow of the game, the way you start to defend this team. And they got out to a really hot start in that second matchup against Portland and really never looked back. I mean, that's the wild one with Portland. That was on the eve of them beating Gonzaga. Like, that's the wild one of like, they went from losing by 30 to Washington State to then beating Gonzaga just a couple nights later.
Naturally.
So we know this Portland team naturally, because we know this team knows how to turn it around. Portland, that is. And Washington State, I think, is the team that you're looking at of, okay, how are they going to play going down the stretch? Because now I'm just staring at the schedule. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They have lost 6 of their last 7 going into this matchup. And as much as you kind of want to lean on Washington State has some talent, look at Ace Glass, look at Andy Okafor. Are they trending in the wrong direction? Because that's the one thing that can be dangerous in a game like this for the Cougs, because maybe the wheels have completely come off, but I think we'll find out very quickly, probably in those first 8 or so minutes of this game.
Yeah, we'll just to put it in like car terms, like they got a warrant suspension right now. We're about to find out if a tire falls off here at the WCC tournament. Like we just don't know what Washington State is on a game in, game out basis, and that's a tough identity pill to kind of swallow when it comes to this time of year. But the thing is, all it takes is one to get it back on the right foot and get it all washed away in March. We've seen all the runs that teams can go on. All it takes is one game to kind of turn it around. And we're not sitting here and saying if Washington State beats Portland, they're going to win the WCC tournament. We're not saying that. But just in general, in terms of, yes, the trends that Zach just mentioned are not great and not great whatsoever. But if they can put together a solid 40 minutes against Portland, they can find a way to get it done and then try and attempt to get some revenge on a team where they let it slip away in USF on the road, especially.
And then there was the second game of the night, and that was San Diego and LMU. And I know going into this one, there were not high hopes of what you're going to see in this matchup. And you know what? I think this delivered exactly kind of what we thought this might be. But San Diego survived the matchup 66-62. This was a game where San Diego led by as many as 13. They led at 11 at the half. Let LMU come all the way back and made this a single possession game. But unfortunately for the Lions, like we have seen on too many times, just the late game execution was not there. Some questionable shot choices, some missed opportunities, and San Diego survives. And I think that feels like it's the only way to kind of describe what happened on Thursday night, because it felt like they were trying to give it away and LMU just would not take it.
No, not at all. And I know you're going to get into some of the shooting splits, so to speak, but San Diego shot the lights out of the Orleans in the first half and then didn't really do so in the second half. But I do want to give a consistent credit to Adrian McIntyre. That first half played with great force. I thought he really controlled the game. And then Juanse Gorosito really just sprinkled himself. When I think about someone who's willing to shoot the rock, Juanse Gorosito is really at the top of that list. And he did an amicable job in doing so. And I want to give credit to the one guy who played all 40 minutes for the Toreros and Tonari Lane. I mean, it's a tough ask to do on day one of the tournament. And he did so, and just providing a little bit of everything, especially because Dominique Ford got injured. So I'm pretty sure that kind of changed the calculus along that front. But USD held on and survived. You mentioned LMU, obviously no Jalen Shelley. Once again, kind of has been status quo the last couple of weeks. You didn't get a whole lot, in my opinion, from Rodney Brown Jr. You didn't get as much as you would have liked from Jan Vide. Aaron McBride tried to will them to victory by himself with some late MJ Amy heroics, but not to be, and lots of questions in the LMU program.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned just with LMU some of the numbers that just stuck out. Of like, yeah, Rodney Brown Jr. only 6 shot attempts in this one, 6 points. I mean, Aaron McBride, 21 points, 8 rebounds. Like you're right. Like he tried to will them to that win. And we've seen this from time to time from Eric McBride. It's like his energy and his activity alone can help kind of lift that team. And that's really what happened there in the second half as he was leading the charge to bring them back. It felt like that MJ Amy just was not getting enough clean looks late in that game. Like it really was just kind of like make sure that MJ Amy makes it, is it his shot selection or the shots he's going to take or as difficult as humanly possible. And I felt, even though he was 7 for 17, he had a decent night. It felt like San Diego at least was making a point of make anyone else but him beat us. And almost did happen because San Diego, that second half just went ice cold. They shot 24% in the second half. You mentioned Juanse Gorosito, who really was the savior for them in that second half. He had 11 of his 14. Nobody else had more than 4 points for the Toreros in that second half. Lane and McIntyre were a combined 0 for 11 in that second half. So, like, they really were just trying to scrape by in this game. And, I mean, to their credit, that's exactly what they did. They took advantage of a LMU team that they shot okay, but they really did not shoot it well from 3. They were 4 for 16 from distance. They didn't shoot it well from the free throw line. They were 8 for 14 there. And this, it does kind of come back to some of the execution that we've seen LMU play with. And because we know that we've seen some good moments from LMU at the court, as we've gotten deeper and deeper into this year, it just did not happen, obviously. You were right on the money on where they would finish in the standings at 10th place. That's where they are. And they were 1 and out in Las Vegas. So San Diego moves on, and they'll be taking on Seattle U, your pick for the team who can make a run here in Las Vegas.
Lest we forget, your pick to go on the run is already cooked with Pepperdine going down. Some extenuating circumstances, I will admit, given what happened within the game against Portland. I also want to give a quick shout out to Gavin Ripp. I thought he had some pretty timely plays. All things considered, his stats don't necessarily pop out. Eventually had 11 points, 4 rebounds, but I think the Bay Area boy himself kind of had some really timely plays right when USD needed it and absolutely took it. And we talk about what LMU is going forward. I mean, I think it's time to face the music time. I mean, what direction is this program going? What's the future look like for Stan Johnson? Because it's a very legitimate question right now. Something we don't really know what it's going to take. We'll see what the LMU leadership does, but the program has stagnated. I mean, I don't think you can really say it any more matter of fact than that. They're expected to take that next step, to be with Santa Clara, to be with USF, and they have not done so, and in fact gone backwards. So, I mean, there's a lot of questions to be raised in Los Angeles over this and what that program looks like, because they look like they're starting to they had upgrades inside Gersten Pavilion with those facilities. The program on its own starting to compete, and they just haven't had the results. So it's rubber meets the road time in that respect. And then on the other side, we mentioned the emotional toll it takes for some of the careers. At least for me, MJ Amy is one of the best personalities I covered in this league, and it sucks to see careers end. That's kind of like one of the first times where it's like, damn, kind of just like that. So I want to shout him out. I thought he was a great representative for the conference, a great representative back at his time at San Jose State, and definitely a guy who, that his personality shined through in the way he played. So tough deal to see him go out, but unfortunately, it's just kind of the tail of the season for LMU.
Yeah, unfortunately, that is the case, and there will be some hard choices, hard conversations probably to be had this offseason with where LMU is going to be going, because this is a program that really has not, as you pointed out, has not made that next step, has not made the moves that we thought it would make on where they finish in the standings, where they finish competitively over the last couple of years. We felt like the talent has been there, but they have just not been able to put all of that together. So we will see what happens in the off season. But we know that San Diego will be moving on to play Seattle U on Friday, and this Seattle, honestly, like, I feel like this is working out very well for Seattle U, because this San Diego team coming off of this one where they had the scrape by, they shoot 24% in that second half. I almost feel like Seattle U's got to be chomping at the bit to get Toreros for their first game, because the Redhawks are one of the best defensive teams in the country. I know, like, you look at their record, like, overall, like 19-12 or 8-10 play. That's a top 25 metrically defense in the country in Seattle U. And we've seen that what they are capable of doing throughout the course of the season. Brandon Maldonado being back, it feels like this might end up being very one-sided very quickly with Seattle U. And I saw a little snippet during, I think it was during halftime, where they interviewed Chris Victor during the broadcast and talked about his team's familiarity with that building, because a lot of those guys played at the Orleans Arena when it was still the WAC tournament just last year. And of course, they have a couple of WCC guys who also know as well. So going into that one, like, it's going to be hard not to think that Seattle is going to have a lot going into that matchup. Obviously, maybe shake off some rust or whatnot in the first few minutes, but I don't think it's going to be much of a problem.
It's a good point you brought up about the WAC tournament, because I didn't really give too much thought about that. And you think of tournament settings, you think of like the way the rims are, and you mentioned some of these guys are very used to what the Orleans rims can give you. So very valid point by you to bring that up and kind of contextualizing what Seattle U can bring to the table. How I feel about them. How much I think Braid Maldonado's a dude, and I look at him, and you mentioned the matchup against San Diego. I do think there's a certain respect to Atreros having a game under their belt, knowing what it's like in this specific year of conditions, acknowledging that it doesn't really change year to year, but just in general, like, there could be a point of, okay, USD had a bad half of shooting, but now they're reacclimated, they get back in the gym the next day, and they feel a little bit better about themselves. But we'll kind of see how that kind of shakes out. But when I look at Seattle U, I look at Brave Maldonado, and for me, I kind of want to see Wilhelm Brodt in this high leverage situation
Defensive Player of the Year per the conference coaches. And I'd be really intrigued to see kind of how it kind of takes shape in this postseason setting, how Juanse Gorosito can kind of make things happen. I'd say more than anything, I think Seattle U has the advantage in terms of limiting creation, and San Diego doesn't really have a ton of creators as it is. And I think that's going to be kind of the big pressure point between the Redhawks and the Toreros.
Yeah, and that will all happen. They are the late game on Friday, so it will be the Portland Pilots taking on Washington State first at 6 o'clock, and then following that one will be Seattle U taking on San Diego. And these episodes are going to be short for the next few days as we're kind of bouncing through the conference tournament. So we'll be back to talk about the results of the Friday games and review that, recap that, and then preview what we're going to see on Saturday, because we've got 2 games every single day over the next what is it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days. So we will continue on and going through that. So thank you for watching, everybody. We be sure to hit the subscribe button on YouTube, Spotify, wherever you listen to the podcast. Follow along on social media at unofficial WCC Pod. Thomas, any last words before we head out for the night?
There's going to be some late episodes in terms of the madness here this first week or so. So I think more than anything, Zach and I can't wait to get to Vegas, but we're getting towards a do or die time in that department. We still got some lives to live these next couple of days as we navigate Friday and Saturday.
Absolutely. All right. For Thomas, I'm Zach. Thanks for watching, everybody, and we will catch you later.